Hello and welcome to another Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. So last week, an editorial headline asked the question, who will run the world? Well, who do you think would ask such a question? How about those interested in actually running the world? And who do we know are these people? Well, of course, they're globalists. These are the folks that advocate for a new world order that is run through world government. If you're a globalist, you don't have an interest in seeing American independence protected, because for the United States to be part of a new world order, it has to be subservient to world government. And world government does not have American interests in mind, nor does it care about American liberty. If you've spent any time looking at the treaties, the constitutions, and the practical application of government as written by those who have a worldly agenda in mind, you see that rights come from government, which is the total opposite of our founders' understanding here in America. And remember that anything that government gives you can be taken away. But rights that come from God cannot be abrogated. That is one of the tenets of Americanism. So knowing that Americanism and globalism don't mix, it's always beneficial that we observe what the globalists are doing to anticipate how they plan to push ahead their agenda, so of course we can counter it. The organization that asked who will run the world is none other than the Council on Foreign Relations in its news magazine Foreign Affairs, which specifically is the January/February 2019 issue. They are suggesting that world order has been stable for the last 2 decades, give or take, but that President Trump has broken it by not supporting what they have called the U.S.-sponsored liberal international order. Now, for any of us who may not have been paying attention these last 2 decades, this means that globalism has been steadily moving ahead in both Democratic and Republican presidential administrations, as well as, of course, Democratic and Republican sessions of Congress. Now let that sink in a bit. So for the last 20 years, our policies have helped to build a new world order, no matter which political party was in charge. Now let me read you a quote that may even further shake you awake. Here we go. The chief problem of American political life for a long time has been how to make the 2 congressional parties more national and international. The argument that the 2 parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one perhaps of the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea acceptable only to doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the 2 parties should be almost identical so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy. The policies that are vital and necessary for America are no longer subjects of significant disagreement, but are disputable only in details of procedure, priority, or method. Does that sound like what we've experienced in the last 20 years? Just throw the rascals out if you get sick of them, but yet the policies stay the same? Well, the author of that quote is the late Carroll Quigley, a professor of history at Georgetown University who wrote the book Tragedy and Hope in 1966. He is also mentioned as an archivist at the Council on Foreign Relations for a couple of years. He saw the strategy even back then of the false dichotomy of left versus right in the political realm, throwing out one party when it didn't satisfy the whims of the voters and ushering in change, but only to the detriment of American independence and liberty. The editor of Foreign Affairs writes that liberalism's project ended up getting hijacked by nationalism with the election of President Trump in 2016. Supporters of this New World Order tried to set the president straight. Get this. The editor wrote, "At one point, Trump's entire national security apparatus gathered in the basement of the Pentagon to explain the order to him. The president was bored and implacable. That was the meeting his then Secretary of State left, calling him a blanking moron," according to Bob Woodward. In the same issue, President of the CFR, Richard Haass, wrote about the building of this world order based on trade, development, and well-functioning monetary operations. He wrote, as I scramble to find it in here, that free trade would be an engine of economic growth and bind countries together so that war would be deemed too costly to wage. The dollar was accepted as a de facto global currency. Now you can see that globalists want to see free trade deals completed, continuing to bind countries together. They view these deals as important to building a stable world order. In fact, they included an article in this issue by economist Alan Blinder, and he said that the 20th century brought about impressive international results, including creating the World Trade Organization, the European Economic Community, which was the runner-up to the European Union, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and many other trade opening deals. He also criticizes President Trump in getting out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, using tariffs, and expressing hostility to other trade agreements. He then goes on to make the case for global progress through free trade deals without even looking in the direction of American independence and liberty. He suggests government getting more involved to offset the losers of trade deals, but yet has the nerve to call this highly regulated trade as being freer. CFR President Richard Haass also pointed to the importance of the United Nations in the global order. He wrote, "The diplomatic dimension of the order gave prominence to the UN. The idea was that a standing global forum could prevent or resolve international disputes." Mr. Haass suggests that resurrecting the old order would be impossible and insufficient due to the emergence of new challenges. He continues further into the article, again, as I can find it here, as we have several quotes here that are buried. He says, "But more than anything else, the current reflexive opposition to multilateralism needs to be rethought. It is one thing for a world order to unravel slowly. It is quite another for the country that had a large hand in building it to take the lead in dismantling it." Now, we've seen more evidence of this just within the last week. The UN can't find widespread support for two of the largest and most invasive pacts that it has assembled, the Migrant Pact and the Climate Change Pact. But yet, we don't agree that President Trump's stance on trade deals is harming the global order. In fact, the draft of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, appears to be a NAFTA on steroids, building a North American Union based on the example of the European Union. So before we celebrate our victory in helping to dismantle a globalist agenda in favor of America first, let's make sure that President Trump and Congress get our message loud and clear. Please contact them and tell them to stop the USMCA and ask others to do so as well. Which brings me to my next point, is that our USMCA reprint from the New American magazine would greatly help in educating others. May we ask for your help in that? So links are in the video description. We ask that you please like and share this video and sign up for our news and action alerts. You're also invited to apply for membership in the John Birch Society if you're not yet a member. And if you're interested in the history of the CFR, we've just published In the Shadows of the Deep State, A Century of Council on Foreign Relations Scheming in World Government by Arthur Thompson, CEO for JBS. Again, check the description for a link. And until next time, we'll see you then.